Hey guys, it's Francis and haven't posted for you in a long time. Well, let's get a few of the bucks running in the background there. Haven't posted for you in a long time on the Market Sniper, and I miss you and I've been thinking of you. Had some amazing experiences, lifestyle trading it out, leaving the grey northern hemisphere for a bit, getting some sun on my face, and I'll also be very fortunate to be doing 10 days on a motorcycle through the Karoo, Cape Town to Joburg. But what I want to talk to you about is I'm going to talk about I suppose the dark side of Southern Africa, and where the things have gone wrong. There's lots of amazing aspects that are very awesome and going right. I'm going to talk about politics, government, and the receiver of revenue. Those are the three I'm going to talk about, and it's a microcosm for everything global, because all that changes are the crooks. The name of the crooks and the thieves in this game. Otherwise the details remain the same. Some are more sophisticated thieves and some are the brazen variety. Essentially what's happened is, under the current president regime, it's being found that large contract arrangements have been entered into with a certain Indian family known as the Guptas. It's found that certain mines have been seeded. Every contract that has ever touched all the main parastatals in this country, so that's South African Airways, Transnet, which is a transportation company which sort of owns things like the rails and harbour network, all are literally without money and are bankrupt, and largely because of procurement invoices that were pumped up by suppliers who were given contract that had to bung people. And it's always the same people that are right at the top. In other words, we're fraught from the top of this pyramid, and I don't use pyramid lightly for those of you who have a conspiracy-based inclination. We are rotten from the top, and it might sound like just a South African issue that I'm going to describe here, but actually it's a global one, and this country is just a microcosm of everything. Just the names, the places change, and the stage in where they're at on the game that leads to a drama and a tragedy changes. So here you have a president who's actually legalized personal theft and plunders the national vault with various mechanisms involving both a complicit family that has a large amount of assets in their name, as a result of very friendly contracts that have been approved by a president that has now taken a huge lead in the African National Congress and seeded many parliamentaries, so much so that you actually have blacks and white South Africans, when you will probably be aware of some of the difficult past regarding apartheid, protesting together against the political system. So the irony is the unity has come, and the unity has come in protest against a rotten head to this body. And you might say, well, yeah, thank God I'm not in Africa. But in the same way, we are subject to an even more sophisticated, slightly less brazen fraud. What's happening in Southern Africa is that the South African Revenue Service is one of the most vigilant and aggressive tax and revenue collectors. I can tell you accounts of people personally that are being chased for money that's not even owed, and are forced to pay it and then prove that they don't owe it. Such is the need, because all the resources are dry in all the state-based areas, the Eskom, the Transnet, in other words electricity, power, harbours, all have been stripped out and hollowed out to shells at such an aggressive rate by the current regime. And what this ends up meaning is that they're out of money, and what happens is they keep squeezing the honest taxpayer, the honest, foolish, if I dare add, taxpayer. We're all fools, and they get squeezed harder and harder for more revenue, more taxes, and more aggressive pursuit by the revenue service. In other words, we have a corrupt ruling class that has built so much debt, done so much theft, deprived all the key infrastructure that they inherited that was in good standing, continually down lower and lower and lower, that it is now, just to keep the country running to an acceptable level, you have to go to unparalleled levels of aggression between the revenue service and the government. And this is called when the parasite starts to oversize the cow. The blood that it requires to survive is such that it literally sucks the functioning out of an otherwise once healthy animal. And this parable is being played out in its own way, in its own style, slightly more sophisticatedly, maybe slightly slower, but in all our nation states. In other words, the leadership, the top of that apex pyramid, that evil eye looking down upon all of you, orchestrates the tax collection, builds the debt, goes after the wars, and bankrupts every major nation into a major reset. It's their conduct that has taken it to this. And who do they turn to when they can't meet bills that they've ramped? They've spent too much on the credit card and the overdraft, building their defenses to obscene levels, waging wars, or just stealing it out. You know, whether you wage wars and you give it to your banker's friend, a slightly more sophisticated bung than knocking up invoices for the security gate on your massive 260 million rand home built for you. They're all just ruses of a different kind, but they're all just ruses, and the marks are you. In other words, the enemy is the government, the power at the top, the tax collector that comes after your money to make right and make whole, to keep a dysfunctional machine functioning longer so that they can continue to suck on the teat of the otherwise slowly wilting cow. And these vampires and parasites are in fact your enemies. And there's a nasty little troika that involves a combination of both law and lawyers that often seem to do exceedingly well, keeping people out of jail for tax that they don't even owe, an incredibly vigilant, oppressive collection, for the sake of the real thieves that go unpersecuted, that are on the other side of the line in the politics. And the reason why they go unpersecuted is they are one of the same. They are all one of the same. They are one of the same. In other words, the usury extracting cartel, the rental extracting cartel of the banking system that always seems to do so well out of the wars that are forged, the overspending of politics to buy votes that always load things up on debt that they are passing for another day, that eventually escalates to such a level that it's unsustainable and you cease to have credible monetary policy. These people are your enemies. Time to realize, being the honest man playing with a straight bat and volunteering yourself to be raped is no longer an act of self-interest for you or your family. It's time to realize that revenue collection is the rental extractor for a corrupt beast that lives at the top of that eye and is making your life hard. It's time to realize why thieves go unhindered in a country like this to actually ruin, and may not be fired on and under protection of law, but can ruin your business, that repeatedly you have to insure your vehicle fleet for ever more at ever greater cost, with ever less coverage due to T's and C's and ever more difficulty in justifying the insurance because you are repeat attacked. Eventually leaves you in the Ayn Rand situation, where it's untenable for the legit businesses to survive in that environment, and it's time to move on to the different valley, to transcend the parasites, the Trojan horses and the bloodsuckers, the rental extractors, the usury bankers, the laws that they make and the lawyers that enforce them, and the revenue collection service that robs you and are part of a mafia. And what's happening here is happening everywhere, just to a different tune. And my voice to you and my recognition to you now is, you need to be strong. You need to recognize when it's time to be moral and who it's time to be moral to. Be moral to your friends. Be moral to people. Be moral to humanity. Do not serve a machine. Do not serve a machine that's designed to rape you, designed to fleece you. And this is where we've come to. At the point of when you recognize that this is a machine designed to live off you like a parasite, you have to recognize the enemy. And you have to say, government is my enemy. The tax collection servicer is the blood bank for government, so that it can supersede its mandate, create war, overspend, and destroy a beautiful country and destroy beautiful countries all over the world, just by different mechanisms, slightly different styles. The names and the faces change. The game is the same. The game is the same. I say for a third time, for the magic number 3, the game is the same wherever you are and wherever you're watching this. You got to either resist or you're part of the problem. If you're not resisting, you are part of the problem. You are providing the blood bank to the vampire, and you are continuing to sustain him longer, so the rest of us have to suffer. It's time. We want to